Great pieces of Carnival glass that he has had over the years. Many times when people talk about some of the rarities that they have, they say that they were able to buy them from George. Not necessarily cheap, but they were able to buy them from George. George and Mavis are longtime collectors. They have some of the greatest rarities in the world, some of the prettiest colors, and some of the greatest stories to tell. So if at this point, would you help me welcome George to the podium?
I deserve everything he said about me. First of all, before I get started, I want to apologize for not having my suit and jacket. My wife gets everything ready for me to go. She said, but now you can take care of what suit you want to take, your tie and so on. So I took care of it, got dressed to come down for the banquet this evening, and guess what? I had everything but my white shirt. Dick Hochstetler offered to let me use his, but I don't have a 42 neck. So the tie would be hanging down to my belly button. We would, and I say we, my wife and I would like to thank Bob Sizer for inviting us, even though 12 other people turned him down. I talked to my daughter and I said, what do you think I ought to do? And she said, well, Daddy, she says, you go ahead and do it because at least you were on the list. That's what we did. I was going to start this out. He introduced me as George Loescher. I remember a man a number of years ago, they asked him what his name was. He said, Jose Jimenez. But I'm not Jose Jimenez. My name is George Loescher. And of course you know my wife, Mavis. We have been married 46 and a half years to each other. She deserves the award to put up with me and all my running and the work that I've done. We have 4 kids, 6 and a half grandchildren, and that half I'm looking forward to her, because it's going to be her, I'm hoping. And we have 2 great-grandchildren. And I know I look old enough to have it, but my wife certainly doesn't. We live in northern Wisconsin, where it's winter 9 months out of the year and cold the other 3. We live up in a town called Kaukauna, and it, by the way, is very close to Green Bay. We're about 19 miles from Green Bay. Yes. Back to my kids. My grandson, Jamie, I was talking to him one time, and he went into the kitchen and I heard this spitting. Jay, I said, are you spitting in the sink? And he said, no, Grandpa, but I'm getting closer. And my little grandson, Sam, who we just love dearly, well, we love all of our kids, but he had the cat by the tail. And I said, Sammy, I wish you'd quit pulling the cat's tail. And he said, I'm not, Grandpa, I'm just hanging on. The cat's doing the pulling. I saw Bob Grissom. He came by the room this afternoon and he said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, about a half hour. And Mavis said, when you do your speech, she said, 2 things you've got to remember, or things you've got to remember. Have a good beginning, a good ending, and keep them together as close as possible. Up in northern Wisconsin, we have a lot of hunting, and Bob Sizer and Bob Nearing were out deer hunting, and they got lost in the woods, which is easy to do up there. And so Sizer said to Nearing, he said, well, maybe we should shoot into the air. Someone will find us. So they shot into the air and there was no response. Shot into the air again and there was still no response. And finally Sizer said to Nearing, he said, you know, somebody, buddy, better answer pretty soon. We only have 1 arrow left. You probably notice I'm a little on the chunky side, along with a few other seniors here. And I'm on a diet. They call it the Valium diet. There's so many out there. And what you do, you take 4th Valiant first thing in the morning, and your mouth droops all day and the food rolls out. On the way here, Tom Mordini, I guess you know Tom, your new vice president, or somebody said because he's Italian, he's not the new president of Vice. I don't know if you noticed that he had kind of a red puffy nose. On the way down here, he stopped at a drugstore. He went in and he asked the pharmacist if he had something for the hiccups. And the pharmacist drew back his fist and he hit him right smack in the face. And Tom dropped to his knees and he got up and he said, "What did you do that for?" And he said, "Well, you asked for something for the hiccups." He said, "Do you have them now?" He said, "I never did." He said, "Share it out in the car." Somebody said that Tom was kind of musical, but I think the only thing musical I heard about Tom was his nose. After he got hit, and he can either pick it or blow it. Get that one digested. Talking to Richard Sinclair, somebody told me that Richard was an abused child. And so I asked him, I said, "Richard, is it true that you were an abused child?" And he said, "No." He said, "My dad only ever hit me one time, but it was with the 41 Buick." And he felt so bad about it, he went out and he bought a new boat, and he's going to teach me how to swim. So he took me out in the middle of the lake and he pushed me overboard. And I said, "Richard, how did it go?" He said, "It was a breeze once I got out of the sack." You all know Carl Schrader. He's been your ex-president, a fine one I might add. Carl has a hearing problem. He had it corrected, he thought. He went back to the doctor and he said, "Doctor," he said, I can't hear again." And so the doctor checked his ear. He said, "Well, Carl," he said, "you have a suppository in your ear." And Carl scratched his head. He said, "Oh, now I know that I don't want my ear clear." So if Carl's sitting down, folks, he can't hear you. You know, that's the best laugh I've ever had. Carl, like we are, he's a Branson, Missouri. I'm sure a lot of you folks have heard of Branson, Missouri. Country music. And Carl was so taken by this country music, he decided to become a country music writer. So he called me one day and he said, "What do you think about, me being a country music writer?" And I said, "I think it's a great idea, Carl." But I said, the person had got a rhyme. So he said, "Well, I'll figure out one and I'll call you back." So he called me back and he said, "I've got the perfect country song." And I said, "Well, could you?" I'm not going to try to sing it. And Carl wasn't too good when he sang it either. But he said, it went something like this. He said, "I went down to the river." And he said, "I threw my clothes on the grass, waded into the water, and I came up to my knees." And so I said, "Carl, knees and grass don't rhyme." He said, "If the water would have been deeper, it would have." I thought this was kind of funny and kind of fishy. Bob Siza, you've heard of Ray Stevens, and he invented the streak. He didn't. He surely did. It was Bob Siza that invented the streak. And you know what happened? He got his Ben Gay mixed up with his Preparation H. One thing I've said this a number of times, I think it's cute. I have a brother living up in Stillwater, Minnesota. Talked to him one time and he said, "Brother George," he said, "I've given up smoking, drinking, women, and carnival glass." And he says, "You know something? It was the most terrifying 15 minutes of my life." Now, my birthday was yesterday and nobody's singing to me. But at my age, it's nice to have reached age 68, but it was very nice for some of the gentlemen here to have had a birthday party for me last night. I appreciate that. And that great big cake in the middle of the table, and we're having a nice time. It was stag. And this gal jumps up out of the cake, and she had, well, she didn't have very much on. She was actually kind of scantily attired. And she looks at me, and she said, "Would you like soup or sex?" I looked at her for a minute, and I thought, yeah, I think I'll take the soup. I'm not going to any more. Close it down. I asked Dick Hogstetler about, he looked at this conglomeration of glass, and I said, "Dick, what do you think I'm going to talk about? Because it doesn't make any sense. It's not all Celeste blue, it's not all Hollywood, it's not all aqua, it's not all of anything. It's just a conglomeration of beautiful things." I was talking to Dale Matheny here about 6 weeks ago, and we were talking about my dear friend, a dear friend of all of us older collectors, Don Moore, and something that he had bought from me, and we were also discussing John Britt. And I was telling him some stories of things I found, and he said, "You know, we go to the conventions, we go to the seminaries, sorry me, and these people will say, they'll show their Celeste blues, and they'll show their aqua opals, and they'll show their whimsies, and they'll show their miniatures, and that's all fine and dandy." But he said, nobody ever talks about how they found some of these things. So I took about 10 pieces that we have, and I'm just going to tell you a few stories of how we found them. And that's really going to be the crux of the whole thing this evening. So you'll just bear with me. My wife will be glad to help me. Won't you, Mavis? Let's start with the Peter Rabbit plate. That's probably the neatest thing. The Peter Rabbit plate in marigold, when I say we own, I say this, we're thankful that we own. We've been blessed that we own. It's not some, look what I got and you don't. We don't think about it that way. Don't try to get away from us. Now, the Peter Rabbit plate goes back many, many years ago, probably close to 30. And a lady told me that she knew about this plate in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. Anybody from Wisconsin? But she says, the reason I'm telling you it's there, because I know she'll never sell it to you. Well, she didn't. But my brother-in-law was going up there on vacation, and I asked him to go in to see if this thing really existed. And I could say, this is probably 30 years ago. So she goes in the kitchen, and what he tells me, she brings it out, and she says, "You know, folks, you should," my wife's sister was there, "and you know this is very rare." And Grant said, well, you know, he didn't know, it's so rare, but what do you have to have for it? She says, "I wouldn't take a dime less than $20. He said he wrapped it up, put it on his arm, he squeezed up money so hard they pooped on him. He calls me up and he says, "I got the Peter Rabbit plate." And he's going to tell me, you better go to the bank, they're going to need money. So I'm writing down, he says, "Bring your checkbooks." I'm writing down the letter too with a red zero, and he write down another zero, he said, and another zero. And I thought, that nut couldn't have possibly paid $2,000 for this. Oh, he said, "I forgot to tell you to put the top past that first zero." But it did cost me $20 and a six-pack of butter, so. Okay. I'm not going to talk about the Celeste Blue Tornado base. That was shown yesterday. I just had it along, and it's so beautiful. This is something I bought at an auction, you know, many years ago. I got a lot of stuff written down someplace. But I bought it at a Collier auction, and it's something we're very proud to own. Proud, poor choice of words, but we're happy to own. And we're just trying to figure out when we got it. But we did get it. We still own it. Bear with me, I'll find all this stuff. Oh, the Peter Rabbit was summer of 1968. I think, is that ours, Mavis? That wouldn't be in here because I didn't have it bigger than my talk. Anyway, we got that at Collier auction, just like you folks sitting here today. The only difference is we only paid $425 for it. And it's, I guess it's drawn an awful lot of attention. It's been sitting in our house for a long, long time, but it's really a beauty. The littlest platoon right at the front, it came from Ohio. A lady sent me a picture of it, and I had this picture on my bulletin board at my office, and I said, you know, that picture just isn't doing me any good at all. I'm going to try to buy that piece of Carnival. So we went out to Brickhaven, Ohio. The lady's name was Esther Rogers, and we tried to buy it. Now, if you don't think I'll get down on the floor and beg for a piece of Carnival glass, you're nuts, because I will. And I did. I'm down there and say, you know, she was laughing at me and having a jolly good time, but I didn't get the job done. So we went home, we went back into Millersburg, and the next day we started for home, and I told Mavis, I'm going to make one more call to see if she'll sell that thing to me. And she said, well, I would have sold it to you yesterday, but you didn't offer me enough money. And I said, well, how much do you want? She said, well, just $100 more than you offered me. Now, I had an 84 Dodge, still have it, 84 Dodge van. I didn't know if that vehicle would go 140 miles an hour, because I got out to her place that quick and purchased that little spittoon. It's got another story that I'm not going to go into it. The Celeste Blue Peacock at the Urn Ice Cream Bowl, a lady told me about that piece. No, that's not true. She told me the lady had Carnival glass. I went to her house, and it was like 30 below zero, which means that was July up in Wisconsin. Yeah, and the lady, she sold me some things, but her glass was out in like an addition built onto their house, and it was so cold you would not believe how cold it was. And so she sold me a couple of pieces, but she said, no more. She said, no more, it's too cold, you come back when it's warm and we'll talk about that piece. And I said, well, I'll give you $150 for it, Mrs. Kelman, if you'll sell it to me today. Nope, you come back when it's warm. So, I got that written down. July 27th, which would be a long time ago, I went back, July 27th, 1985, I went back, and that was the hottest day there was. And it seemed like about 120 out. Every time I tell her it gets hotter. But anyway, she says, come on in, I know what you want. She put me out on the back porch where the breeze was blowing, because it was so ungodly hot. She said, I found out what that is. She said, since you were here last. And I said, oh, here we go. And she said, you're not going to get it for any $150. And I said, okay, what do you want? She said, $270. Did I take advantage of her? I don't think so. That's been a long time ago, and maybe at that time, $270 was a lot of money. I don't think, well, not quite that bad. Okay, the next piece, there's a little story about this one. The Grape Cable bowl, the pie crust edge, was one of the first nice pieces that we ever got. I bought a little town called Walworth, Wisconsin, out of an antique shop for $40. Now, that was the day I was a high roller making the big dollars, and I sold it to a guy named Carl Geisler from Carthage, Illinois, at the Louisville Convention. I don't know how many years ago that's been, for $90. Well, then I got to thinking one day, why did I sell that thing? So Mavis and I took off for Carthage, Illinois, to see if that bowl was still there, and or if Carl would sell it back to us. And we went down there, and yeah, come on up in the attic, and that's where his glass was at. It was up in the attic. So while we're looking for this, we're sorting through things, and my dear wife comes across this piece, the aqua-opalescent strawberry bowl. Now, that is the only one ever reported. I would believe it would go probably $20,000 or better if I wanted to sell it, but I don't. But my point is this: if it hadn't been for the Grape and Cable bowl for $40 that I sold for $90, wanted to buy back, I would never have been back to Carl Geisler's place, and Mavis wouldn't have found that piece. So that piece got us that piece indirectly. So you follow your leads. And oh, by the way, we had to pay $165 for that Grape and Cable bowl to get it back. And guess how much the strawberry bowl cost us? $165 also. Great! It's just the greatest thing there ever was. The white wisteria water pitcher. These are all stories, and they're not meant to be humorous. They're just telling you, how things can be acquired. My ex-brother-in-law, the same one got me the Peter Rabbit plate that I told him about. He called me one day and he said, I put $55 worth of fuel oil in this lady's barrel in South Beloit, Illinois. I think it was Nellie Garvey. And he said, she's got this water pitcher in her basement along with the tumbler. Would you be interested in it for $55 so she could pay her bill? So I went down and looked at it, and I said, yeah, didn't know what it was. Because that goes back years ago. So, but what I did, I paid her fuel oil bill of $55 that she owed, because she sat down, tipped a few too many once in a while, the old gal did. And so I got the pitcher and one tumbler because she couldn't pay her fuel oil bill for $55. So that's how we got the white wisteria. People complain about chips and nicks, and we listen to it today, and pretty soon you get sick and tired of hearing all of it. This piece right here is called Peacock Tail and Daisy. And to date, I have not seen another one in this color. We were at Madison, Wisconsin, and went to it was in an antique show in a shopping mall. I get these words right. Shopping mall, and I saw this thing, but it's got a chip on the collar. So it was like $65. It's got a little chip here. Well, if I'm selling it to you, it would be just a wee nick. If I'm buying it from you, the collar's half gone. Anyway, the piece was, I think, $60, something like that. I got it. That was pretty close. $60. I bought it March the 6th of 1982. We went to see Bob and Sandy Johnson, who had a little antique mall in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And Bob said to me, "Have you been down to the show yet?" And I said, "Yes, we have." And he said, "Did you see that blue Carnival glass bowl?" And I said, "Yes." Didn't tell him we bought it. He said, "Well, we saw it this morning. We left a second. We don't buy stuff with chips." And I thank God, because I got it for $60. And he had the chip bothered him bad enough that he left his set. So that's how that one came to be. This little punch cup, just part of the things that have happened in life, and I've shown this a number of times, and I'm going to have to tell you, it's one of my proudest possessions. First of all, it didn't cost me anything, and second of all, Don Moore gave it to me. He called one day and just kiddingly, I said he picked this up, and I just kiddingly said, "No, I'm not talking to you anymore, Moore." And he used to call me twice, 3 times a week. And I said, "I'm not talking to you anymore unless you sell me that punch cup." And it wasn't but a few days later, it came through the mail, and I said, "There's no bill." He said, "There is no bill, it's yours." So Don Moore gave me that punch cup. So of all the pieces we own, it's one of my pride and joys. Clyde? Am I doing all right here on time? Okay. Let's get Jack Adams involved here real quick. This, Dr. Jack has been, I was going to say friend Jack, but you might fight me on that. Jack has been an acquaintance of ours since 1970, and he came to our house. We lived in Park Avenue in Beloit, Wisconsin, and he would sit there and we'd be talking. He's going like this. And this guy had been trying to figure me out. So yesterday I asked him, I said, "Jack, have you ever figured me out yet?" He says, "No way." And he's a psychiatrist. But anyway, he called one day. A lady called from Coshocton, Ohio, and if anybody has the Marie McGee books, in there's a Hobstar and feather vase in green about yay tall. And this lady called me and wanted to know if I wanted it for $4,000. Was it 4, Jack? Yeah. And I said, "Yes, but I can't afford it. But I know somebody that can. He's a doctor." So I called Jack, and he was at my house. I don't remember the time exactly, but we flew out together to Akron, Canton. We rented a car. He never did pay me mileage or anything either, by the way. We went to Coshocton, Ohio, where she was at, and Jack, he was carrying a cardboard box about that long that he had all folded up. Here we're going down through a hair field, Jack carrying his cardboard. And what he did, he had scotch tape in his pocket, this cardboard under his hand, and when he got there, he folded the cardboard out, put the scotch tape on, stuffed paper in, and all that thing home. But the thing about it was, I couldn't afford it, but I thought the world of him then, and it's changed now, though, Jack. Because that has dwindled quite a bit. But the fact that I was helping Jack was something, because we went together, we had a good time that day. Maybe a little bit. But in the house was the only known orange tree hat-pin holder in peach opalescent. So you see, he was rewarded, but I was rewarded too. So I just want the point that I'm making is that sometimes you do nice things for people and you get a whole lot more nice things back. Okay? The white one, the white hat-pin holder, the only reason I brought it along because I thought the 3 looked nice together. It was bought at auction, I don't remember how many years ago. It was Paul Jancar owned it, and it brought I think I paid $250 for it. Yeah, I bought it May the 28th of 1980. It was a Woody auction, and it cost me $200. And I think it's a real frosty one, and it's real beautiful. The little thing in the middle, you guys, it's too late for this now. You can't do it anymore. But we had all of it. Oh, boy, somebody wants that paper. Something I need to do. Oh, here it is. started collecting, we had Presnick's books and Hartung's books, and I'm going through Presnick's books and I'm looking at all these beautiful things. I wish I could see that little that someday. And in there, it dawned on me that if Hartung, not Hartung, if Presnick's drawing pictures of this stuff, then she must have seen it. And she was gracious enough to put the name down of the person that owned it. So I thought, what have I got to lose? I'll call the lady that owns it. It was Eleanor Conley at Parkersburg, West Virginia. And she agreed to sell it to me. And she shipped it to me. It cost me something. Forget it wasn't very much. And let's see, $295 what I had to pay for that whimsy. But in it was this note. I still got it, all rolled up, getting a little tattered. She said, dear Mr. Loescher. She called me Mr. Wasn't that nice? The fantasy, she called it, was still in the family of an old glass blower when I discovered it sitting in a window with some artificial flowers in it. Very dull with an accumulation of dirt. It hasn't been washed for a year and a half now. I hope it gives you as much pleasure as I have had with it. If not, return it. You got it. I think I have a hole in my head to sell it anyway. Amen to that. Easy. But I was going through, but where I really goofed up is I told Joe Carruthers what I was doing. And from then on, I couldn't buy anything else from anybody because he went through the books faster than I could, and he was calling these people. So anyway, but that's where I got that. I think we're down, to 2 pieces? Okay. This little piece right here, honey, you want to hold that? It's a little blackberry wreath miniature, not miniature, a little plate. I think they're not even 6 inches. And I've got 2 of these. And I'm not going to tell you both stories. I'll just tell you the one. I'll tell you both. Okay. One of them, I only brought one along. One of these was owned by Sam Fair. What was his relationship to the glass company, Jack? He owned it at one time, right? Millersburg Glass Company. Yeah. This was his son's plate. We are the first owners of it out of the Millersburg Glass Company. And how I got it, it was on display at Millersburg. Millersburg Days had all these things sitting in the window, and this little plate was in there, along with a feathered hard water pitcher in amethyst, I believe, and a windflower compote in marigold, kind of a pastel marigold. And they didn't want to sell them. So it was getting close to Christmas, and my wife was sick with the flu, and I get a call from John Fair's wife, saying that they wanted to sell them. They wanted $1,100 for the pair, for the little plate and the compote. Mavis said, we're not buying anything, because she didn't feel good. Well, wasn't that too many months later, I drove out there because I was feeling pretty good. And I went out and we struck a deal on these 2 pieces, on this compote and on this plate, and I bought it from John Fair. A few years later, I was going, I think, to the Pacific Northwest. They invited me out there, and so I wanted to verify what I was told was true. Excuse me, lady, was true. And so I called her and asked if I could speak to John. And he had just passed away from a massive heart attack. He was 52 years old. So that piece was from the Fair family, okay? The other one I have to hold was from Lucille Lau, and a lot of you people never heard of Lucille Lau, but there's a few of us that have, and there was no bigger con in the country than Lucille Lau. But I liked her because when I went to her door, I knew what she was. There was no secrets. You knew what you were dealing with. And so Don Doyle called and he said, Lucille has found 4 little blackberry wreath plates, 2 purples, 2 amethysts and a mirror. There were 3, 4, yeah. 3 amethysts and a marigold. So I called her, and she said, yeah, she would sell me one of the amethysts. But I didn't know the other ones were there. That I only knew about there were 2. So, but she won't ship. So I drove out to Ohio, left the house. I think I probably missing 1 shoe when I left. And I was in such a big hurry when I got out there. Here sits the other 2 plates. And so I tried to buy them from her. Oh, no, she said, they're not for sale. They're going to my daughter. So I said, well, I'll give you $275 a piece for them. And she said, do I have a daughter? And she gave them, so I got them. And that really and truly happened. And she gave me a chunk of trail bologna about that long and a big box of soda crackers. That was like 8 o'clock at night, 8:30. And I turned around, drove right straight home. I was so thrilled you would not believe. The last piece that we're going to talk about is this one right here. And you'd have to come up to see it before you can understand what I'm telling you. This is not a rare bowl. It's a hanging cherries and green, a Millersburg bowl. It's very, very pretty. We saw this at Carl Geisler's place many, many years ago. I probably got that written down someplace too. But anyway, where have I got that news? Hold on a minute. Don't have the year, sorry. But anyway, Davis said, no way are we spending $95 on a Carnival glass bowl. I said, we can't hardly afford stuff for the kids. Who's got kids when there's Carnival glass? This comes before kids, maybe. So we got home, and I told her, I said, you got to be out of your gourd. I'm going to call Carl and buy that bowl and have him ship it to me. So the bowl came. Now, what's so different about a green hanging cherries bowl that I had to have for $95 a zillion years ago? Well, when they made it, in the bottom, you come up, I'll show it to you, they put a metal plate. You can't see it from there, but there was a plate put in here. And the name on the plate is Meister. There's no other bowl in the world like this. The name of Meister. Now, remember what I said about my wife? She said, we can't afford a $95 bowl. We're not going to buy that bowl. Her maiden name was what? Meister. And she left it set. But we do own it. But it's the only piece of Carnival glass, unless it's Fern brand chocolate, but that's a production item. The only piece of Carnival glass I've ever seen where it's not handwritten or scribbled or etched, and it's part of the mold of the name Meister. So that kind of a special piece to us. I think that's about all that I have. I gather up my cards. There's a whole big bunch of them. It was said a number of years ago to me, and I'm not going to mention any names, and for a long time it bothered me that nobody knows your name. And I told you my name, George Loescher. Nobody cares who you are. That's possible. But you see, there is somebody that knows my name, and that's the old man upstairs. He knows my name. And somebody does care, he cares. Okay? And I was told at that time that I'm a has-been, and it hurt. But you know, I got to thinking about that. That's one of the nicest compliments I've ever had in my life. I am a has-been. I have been chasing Carnival glass for 33 years. I have been faithful to my wife for 46 and a half years. I have been faithful to my family. I was faithful to my work. I have been faithful to a lot of things. The one thing someone has always been faithful to me is my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry to say that I haven't always been faithful to Him as He has been to me. But I try. In that, I hope your time wasn't totally wasted. I don't think ours was, as far as I'm concerned. And I want to thank you, Bob, for having us. We appreciate that very, very much. Thank you for your time. God bless you.